in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Pièces de Résistance. I hope I can say that right. I'm not really very good with French. An extraordinary benefit series celebrating AQR's 40th anniversary. I'm Heather Lindy, and today we are featuring performance poet Siaara Freeman. After a holiday break, please join us in January and most Sundays through April for live online readings and conversations featuring exceptional new, emerging, and established poets and writers, all of whom have been published in AQR. The series is hosted by the Anchorage Museum at the Rasmussen Center. And while all of the events are free, AQR, like so many literary journals these days, could use your financial help. And for this program, we have a generous supporter that is matching all donations of any size, dollar for dollar, up to $1,000. It's a great opportunity to add value to your gift to AQR. And so please consider that today. Now I'd like to introduce Ronald Spatz, the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Alaska Quarterly Review. A professor of English at the University of Alaska, Ron is a former National Endowment for the Arts Fellow and the recipient of 2 Alaska Governor's Awards and a Contribution to Literacy Award from the Alaska Center for the Book. Under Ron's 4 decades of leadership and vision, Alaska Quarterly Review has created really strong connections between Alaska and the larger literary community in the United States and abroad. And AQR has been influential in supporting new and emerging writers, as well as presenting works like we are today that include a rigorous questioning of larger societal issues. Ron?
Thank you, Heather. I want to make a number of announcements first. And I just got a text that we're having a little trouble with our YouTube feed. Cody, Anchorage Museum, Cody, if you could just check and see if that feed is going through. I want to make a few announcements and acknowledgements. Alaska Quarterly, as Heather said, acknowledges the Anchorage Museum for hosting and providing technical support for this event, and the Center for the Narrative and Lyric Arts, Alaska Quarterly Review's 501c3 umbrella organization, which makes this event possible. I also want to make a land acknowledgement. Alaska Quarterly Review recognizes Indigenous land on which Alaskans live. AQR is located in Anchorage, and Anchorage is Dena'ina homeland. Dena'ina is the language spoken by the traditional, present, and future caretakers of this land. Land acknowledgement opens a space with gratefulness and respect for the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspective of Indigenous peoples, and marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. Joining me today, as you've met, is Heather Lindy as co-moderator. Heather is the author of 4 books, all published by Algonquin. If you lived here, I know your name. Take good care of the garden and the dogs. Find the Good, which is this year's Alaska Reads book, and her most recently published book, Of Bears and Ballots. And obviously that couldn't be more relevant, Of Bears and Ballots. And now to begin. We are absolutely delighted to present performance poet Ciara Freeman. Ciara is from Cleveland, Ohio, where she is the current Lake Erie Siren. In addition to publication in AQR, she was a finalist for the 2017 Button Poetry Chapbook Competition, the 2017 Bettering American Poet and Best of the Net Poet, a 2018 Winter Tangerine Chapbook Fellow, and a 2018 Poetry Foundation Incubator Fellow. Ciara is a 4-year Pinkdoor Fellow and a 2018 Pinkdoor Faculty member. She is a teaching artist for the Center for Arts Inspired Learning and the co-founder of Outsiders Queer Midwest Writers Retreat. Ciara will be reading 10 poems, presenting them. The program will be divided into 3 parts, allowing us to incorporate some conversation along with her presentation. Welcome, Ciara.
Hello. Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me twice, really, because like you said, you had me first in your journal, and now you're having me here as a performer, and I appreciate that. One of the things that is really interesting as a writer for me personally is what it is like to live on both the page and the stage, and what it's like to jump back and forth between the two, and to see if my work can hold the same weight that it does on stage that it could on paper, and vice versa. And really the difference is, for me, is just form and craft. What lessons you are paying attention to from your heroes that have already been published, that have already paved the way, like you have done with decades of work here. So it's like you pay attention to what works, you pay attention to the rules, and you see where you can bend them, and you figure out what's innovative and what's interesting, and you keep the past, but you continue to add on to it when you're on the page. And for the stage, as far as I'm concerned, it's so emotional based. It's sometimes everything I wish I could do with my page poems. Sometimes I wish, like we all do when we get these rejection letters, that sometimes we could have a conversation with the editor. And I'm often thinking to myself, like, maybe if you heard me, maybe you just didn't hear it, you don't understand. And obviously, you know, it's preference. And I'm 30 now, and I've been submitting to journals and things for so long that I finally realized that, you know, sometimes your poems are just not good for that space, and that's okay too. But for a while, I was like, it's because they can't hear it. And I do still think it's a very big difference in hearing someone's work and seeing the expressions on their face, and actually living in that moment with them, and that art that is important. I also want to thank Heather for being the moderator this evening. I really appreciate that. I love having someone that I can look forward to having a conversation with. I already want to ask you about your titles. I love the titles of all your books. I think they were fantastic. I was like, what? This is Bears and Ballads. This is a poem. I feel like I need to be at a workshop right now. I'm so excited to discuss anything with someone who obviously has such a creative mind. And I also would like to thank Cody, who is tech support, who I got to meet with earlier, and the Anchorage Museum in general. I went ahead and did my own research. I like to know about the places that I'm performing at, and it's awesome. I'm always interested in places, and my work focuses a lot on who I believe is overlooked, what I believe is not getting the biggest of conversations and deserve to. And so when I encounter spaces and places that highlight minorities in any way, I am always so grateful to be a part of that experience. So those are my thank yous. I'm not going to get too much into it. I also want to shout out, because I do think, as you should, when you get new accomplishments, and they are important, you wanna say something. I also got accepted into the manuscript coaching fellowship with the Watering Hole. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm also now the teaching associate with the Annisfield Wolf Project Foundation for the Sisterhood Girls. So I'm really excited. I thought that 2020 was just awful, but you know, guys, like, good things are still happening. If you try and you find good things, sometimes you can. So I just want to send that out to all the listeners, and thank you all for taking time out to listen to me. I'm always appreciative of an audience. I am a Leo rising. I love to see people. I miss people. That's what I miss most. So thank you for allowing me this space. And to start off, I'm going to do a poem that I feel like I'm pretty much, this is where my career, as it goes as a performance poet, really got started. And this poem is obviously very near and dear to my heart. It's one of the first times I was completely honest in poetry, in a way that scared me, in a way that spoke to vulnerability, in a way that I was young and I wasn't as afraid before. And now sometimes I look at it and I go, you were fearless. You were a fearless young girl. So I still enjoy this poem because I obviously feel the same way. And also I admire and I miss the fearlessness of that girl. So here's this poem. 10 things they never tell you about the drug dealer's daughter. 1, she loves Greek mythology. And by the time she is finally old enough to learn to love anything more than herself, he's already dead. 2. I am 9 when I realize I've got the blessing of being brought up in a contemporary concept. I am the first on my block to get a stay-at-home dad, Brad. He plays Barbies and dominoes and he cooks, y'all. We got so much baking soda in my basement, you can open 10 bakeries. My daddy is a baker. The cakes, they sell so fast, you never see them, just the customers looking some kind of hungry, like they got a sweet tooth. Only my daddy can yank, and I swear, y'all, we gonna be rich. 3, none of her friends believe her until they all turn training bra and things start disappearing and reappearing in her house. First, Tanya's television set, her older brother's attention, then Danielle's 4-fingered ring and her father's retirement fund. Finally, it is Brittany's whole mother. 4, the girl and their family, they disappear into a new neighborhood. The father, the drug dealer, he never misses a play, a beauty pageant, a poetry slam, and they ain't rich, but they ain't in them projects no more either. 5, by the time I realize what we are, it's already too late. We are an urban novel you will skim over at Walmart, a 4-minute smirk on Fox 8's face. What would occur if Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino made a film under Eazy-E's direction? The question Black America asks itself every Sunday. I am a bakery with nothing sweet left in it. 6, my father is killed. My father is shot point blank range in the back of his left ear one night, but y'all probably knew this was going to happen. I mean, standing on stage makes me feel better, makes this less magic, more real, makes this poem less 10 things you didn't know about Ciara Freeman. And now it's not about a cliche you can click your fucking teeth at 7. Some nights I put on my father's chalk outline and I teach it how to walk. My face is a haunted house my mother screams at from habit, not fear. Most days I am an alley in Cleveland, Ohio that no one will enter alone. 8, he is found with no jewelry, just his pocket watch. My baby teeth are snuggled inside. After the autopsy, they are returned to me, chipped. 9, I disappear into my old neighborhood. I got an itch the suburbs ain't got nails for. I find Danielle. I asked her if she inherited she asked me, did I inherit any of my daddy's magic? I shake my head. She abracadabra something into her arm and says, you know, the drug dealer is supposed to die, right? 10, I know the stories. I know magic can turn men into myths, that the hood can make any Black man a monster, and that Zeus made an exit wound big enough for his daughter to walk out of fully armored. And Athena, unlike most goddesses, well, she finally learned to love something more than herself. Thank you. So that is that poem. I get choked up about that poem from time to time during certain times of year. This is one of those times of year. My father's birthday is on the 21st of this month. And I really debated for a minute on whether I was going to do these poems, but I always want to challenge myself to make sure, just as again on the idea of being a writer on stage and being a performance poet, I want to see what I feel like is necessary to share, and if I can challenge myself to do it and do it authentically. And even when it's not like something fun or when I don't feel like the pressure is on. And so I challenge myself often with my writing in general, and I also try to challenge myself with my performance. So yeah, that is why I chose to do these poems during this time of year, when I typically stay away from it during this time of year, his birthday, and then in April when he was murdered. I typically stay away from poems about him, but I want to challenge myself. So here we go. This poem is titled, Once You Know What Your Father's Brain Looks Like. Outside of his skull, you understand life better. than other 16-year-olds. Once you ask about open or closed caskets, you are essentially at least 30. You have time to develop an ulcer. You have already graduated high school 250,000 times. You know exactly what love is now, and you are suddenly uninterested. When the coroner asks your age, you don't remember your birthday. It's in 2 weeks. You tell him you're not sure, but you know every second you are getting closer to your father. You remember your grade. The room reminds you of dissection. 3 weeks ago, you squirmed at the fetal pig's corpse. You had to be excused from class. I'm a junior, you say. Your hands are steady as he pulls the sheet back. He wants to know if you are ready. You yank what is left of your father into view. He explains how the bullet entered his skull. You repeat him. He talks measurements and metal and cartilage, and you make sense of this despite your brain being its own vicious assault. You refuse to cringe. You spent the night before learning new terminology. You can speak forensics. You can speak autopsy. You are fluent in fatality. The coroner makes eye contact with you. After you correctly identify the portion of your father's brain most destroyed, he says, "Kid, I am sorry about your father. Really, I am. But you might have a future in this." So that is that poem. I had to view my father's body, and that was a tough thing. And then that conversation with the coroner was also like a really tough conversation. It was a trauma that I'm still unpacking with my therapist to this day. And I often think how much the guy meant well, but I also think about how much that set with me, just that comment, that idea that death would be something that I would have to get used to. I would probably be good at, that I would get used to, and that I was good at for a 16-year-old. And no 16-year-old should ever have to be that strong, ever. This is the poem that got published in Alaska Quarterly. And I'm really excited to read this poem. This poem also just recently won like a little slam. So this is one of those poems that I enjoy to do because I feel like it translates well, both on the page and on the stage. For hood rats who consider necromancy when time ain't enough, after dearest John. So may she rest in peace. And Zaki is one of my heroes. Like, and I cannot even think sometimes when I think about, that's another fallen hero. I am a sweet, sweet spoil of war, pouring liquor to parched earth and quenching death, happily giving her my mouth when nothing else is open. I have unfastened body bags and dared to see myself in my father's closed eyes. I open so much more than I can carry sometimes. They call me chicken head, and I laughed a legacy of ghosts in their direction. I raised my hand and I told them, talk to the dead, boo. I don't have to look for a homicide to look like one. I remember this and conjure my block back. The late 90s is now an ancient thing, screeching artifacts. I'm a black banshee and all the laments sound like gunshots. I know I'm haunted. Don't start no seance, won't be no seance. The blacker the manifestation, the redder the juice. And I know hood rats got all the juice. I know they called us spooks back in the day. A group of spooks is called a graveyard. A group of graveyards is called inevitable. What if I If not the apparition's daughter, the haint's fleshed friend, levitation is genetic. My people could fly all that time hanging in trees. You got to learn to talk to what is no longer here, but still here at once. Listen, ghoul friend, I love you and all that you have lost and wish to find again. Us Ouija board built bitches, mothers collapsed into daughters on concrete, 1 million screams from one mouth, another voice added like angel wings to a whipped back. They want us quiet, baby, because they know, sure as heaven, we gonna wake something. So that is that poem. And that poem is slightly different from the version, because I want to address that. That poem is slightly different from the version that got published, because this is a performance set, and that is the performance version. So sometimes in performance versions, you got to add a little bit more punchlines. You got to get a little jazzy with it. It's not as concise. It doesn't need to be as neat. Your initial feelings can go there. And it's not so much about the craft and the form as it is about the passion and the placement of the words and how you say things given a certain time. So I'm going to open up the conversation between me and Heather. Those were those 3 poems, and now we can discuss.
Ciara, that was just, my heart is right where you are. And I there was some kind of planned questions, but in listening to you, what I would like to hear from you, to know a little bit more, is about grief and how that translates into your poem, and the idea versus sort of personal grief, but then, you know, the overall sort of sense of institutional trauma. There's a double thing going on here, and I wonder if you could talk about that a little.
I think that's such an important thing to mention, because I try to, I think, especially, you know what, I won't even say especially with performance poetry. I will say with all my poetry, I'm inviting people to have a conversation. I know I'm not the only person sad. That's first and foremost. I acknowledge that. And I think that's important to acknowledge when you are discussing your own pain in general. Just a reminder to remind yourself from time to time. And I open up, I'm the person that comments back on my YouTube, you know, on my videos. I comment back to every person. I get so many comments from people who have fathers who have passed, or a mother who has passed in a violent way. And they're like, how you're coping with this is so beautiful. And you're my superhero. And I remind them, no, I'm human. I'm just an artist. I just got blessed with a different way of expressing it. But I'm absolutely sad, right? And that's something that I think I've battled with a lot. I purposefully make sure I do happier poems in my sets, right? I want to make sure I remind people that grief is a part of life, but joy is too. And that I sometimes feel like I'm this caricature of this sad girl. And I want to remind people, like, yes, I am the sad girl. I will not deny it. I am. But I'm also this insanely happy girl. Like, I have found so much joy throughout, like, performance and just living life and meeting people and finding different relationships and building different bonds and understanding life and understanding myself more. I realized that grief is going to be a part of my work always, because grief is going to be a part of my life always. I'm always going to miss my father. But systematically, it doesn't have to be this way always. And that is a bit of hope that I have, right? I'm like, okay, I'm sad, but you know what? My daughter's daughter doesn't have to be this sad. There is, you know, and I think that also has a conversation of sometimes we're selfish with our grief. And we're like, well, if I can't ever be unsad, well, that's the end of it. And I don't think it quite ends there. Right. I think the conversation can continue. I think that I've had conversations with drug dealers who are like in the bars where I'm doing the performance, and they'll come up to me and they'll be like, you miss your dad, huh? I'm like, real bad. They're like, you probably would have preferred him be here watching you in the audience than you having like some money, huh? I'm like, yeah, I definitely would have probably preferred that 100%. And they would be like, I have a daughter. I probably should like slow down my life, huh? And I'm like, yeah. And like, do I think I'm a superhero? No. Do I think I'm saving lives? Absolutely not. But do I think I'm changing things and making bigger conversations accessible to the people who deserve to have them? Yes. And for that, I'm proud of myself. And I know he would be too. I know he would feel like I died and my daughter's doing something with this, period.
Sometimes I think for people who I'm not a poet, but writers, you know, and you were talking about the form versus, you know, writing it versus performing it and how you had to change a few words. But what I'm wondering about is, you know, when you're writing something, you get it out on the paper, it's very private. It's like a private catharsis, you know, and you talked about that, you know, being so brave. For many, many people, you know, it's brave enough to write a poem like The Drug Dealer's Daughter. But then to keep performing it all these years, does it does it help or does it bring it right back? I mean,
That's a great, you know what? I think people have asked me so many questions. No one's ever been nice enough to ask me that. No one's ever been personally, and I've done so many different panels and Q&As. No one has ever not once asked me, thank you, Heather. No one's ever been that concerned about my mental health. No one's like, so are you re-scabbing yourself or are you healing yourself? And the conversation is, I do think I'm healing myself. And I think a big part of that is what I referenced earlier, is that I'm big on people. I'm big on connections. I'm big on that. So I feel like when I'm that vulnerable, I inspire other people to be that same level of vulnerability. And I think a more vulnerable, softer, kinder world is what we all need, one. I also feel like with that type of vulnerability, I wrote the poem. I meant the poem. I'm gonna mean this poem forever. But at the same time, there are poems about him that hurt me worse. There are bigger things. When I was a younger girl, that's what I could conceptualize, was like, he's dead. And people say these mean things and it's unfair. And I want to widen the conversation and talk about systematic racism and explain how we characterize people as one thing and we don't acknowledge that people are multi-layered and multifaceted. I wanted to address all of that. But now I'm also addressing deeper things like, yeah, but like, he had a kid and I was that kid and maybe you should have been a little bit more thoughtful. Like, I am starting to unpack different things. So it's like, there are poems that hurt me more. Now, am I out here doing those poems yet? No, I'm not. I know, I think I have gotten to a space where I can decide how brave I am. And when I was younger, I was just dead set on being fearless. And I was madder at the world. I had more to prove. I have less to prove at 30. I feel like I've proved quite a bit. And I can slow down on my road to proving things, and I can just create art that I'm proud of.
well, let's hear some more. You've got another set with, I think.
Yes, let's do it.
And so let's hear some. This is really terrific, Ciara. Thank you.
I'm so excited. Let's get into this. So this next poem is called Urban Girl. And it is after Terrence Hayes, Angel Nafis, and Natasha T. Miller. Urban Girl. Urban area. Urban Girl is her area. Urban Girl, bad investment, not safe for children, not where you bring your mama. Urban Girl, depreciation in value, eviction, unnoticed, unspeakable property damage. Urban Girl get called property. Urban Girl get called damaged. Urban Girl get called unspeakable. Most folks act surprised that Urban Girl is even able to speak. Urban Girl gets spoke at, spoke with, spoke for, spoke through, but not to, never to. Urban Girl get catcalled also, except Urban Girl deserved it. Urban Girl always dressed like it. Urban Girl fast. Y'all say Urban Girl got a child. Urban Girl got a hood, but Urban Girl don't got no childhood, and all y'all got jokes. Urban Girl got jokes. Urban Girl got lines and punches. Urban Girl get whispers. Urban Girl murdered daddies, murdered mamas, murdered brothers, murdered sisters, murdered cousins, murdered aunties, murdered uncles, murdered friends, murdered lovers. Urban Girl heard you say death was natural. She used to seeing it with her own eyes and her family's blood on them streets. Urban Girl made a whole language out of family and blood and streets. No, you won't understand. Urban Girl, know when you say urban, what you really want to say is ghetto, and you do. It's silent. It's still there. Urban Girl heard it. Urban Girl knows what condescending feels like. Fuck if she can spell it. Urban Girl spells it. Urban Girl turned her hand into an answering machine in the 90s so you may speak to it. Urban Girl 90s. Urban Girl baby. Urban Girl baby's kids. Urban Girl proof of that we don't die, we multiply equation. Urban Girl dead daddy ghost grin right from her face. Talk to the hand. Urban Girl, y'all answer whether you like it or not. Urban Girl leads the line from the back. Urban Girl stand in line for Jordans. Urban Girl stand in line for shit we don't want all the time anyway. Urban Girl free lunch, care source, public assistance. Urban Girl hides her everything in her eyes. She knows It's the one place America can't look for too long. Urban girl saw you say welfare queen. Urban girl saw you writing. Urban girl dyslexic. Urban girl reads farewell queen. Urban girl always understands she's a queen though. Urban girl J's. Urban girl get Jade and J's for J's. Urban girl J did. Urban girl J did. Urban girl Beyonce. Urban girl back in your day Beyonce. Urban girl blind micros. Pay my bills. Say my name. I'm a survivor. Urban girl been in formation. Urban girl old school. Urban girl, all my life I had to fight. Urban girl, old school. Urban girl, still at it. Urban girl, hip. Urban girl, Black China, clap back. Amber Rose, bounce back. Lil Kim Dream. Cardi's tongue. Nikki's cackle. Meg's knee. Urban girl, more empire than Scandal. More cookie than Olivia. Don't get why y'all think Miss Pope got it so much better. Urban girl will set it off up in here. Urban girl, make you say the whole name. Fuck if you can spell it. Urban girl, Jada Pinkett Smith. Queen Latifah. Vivica A. Fox. Kimberly Elise. Urban girl know you a copycat and you grimy with it. Urban girl saw you twerking. Heard you call Miley innovative and see Rihanna must be ratchet. Heard you call Kylie Jenner's locks edgy and say that Zendaya Coleman must smell like weed. I mean, we get it. You alternative. And urban girl, your bad example. Urban girl still your example though. Urban girl still bad. Urban girl don't need your praises. She want all those roses black when you give them. She know that concrete they came from. She know if they red, they might have been bleeding. Urban girl murdered roses. Urban girl used to it. Urban girl old school. Urban girl sphinx speak. Urban girl smarter than y'all think. Urban girl a lion's jaw full of riddle and bones. Get her story told in shade, in every shade but her own. Y'all so shady. Urban girl sphinx got her nose knocked off. Still draped in gold, though, still standing. Urban girl still standing, draped in gold, still standing. All this time, nose knocked off, still standing. Giving everybody else something to talk about. So that is that poem. And here's one of my poems that I get a lot of joy out of doing, right? This is one of my fun poems. This poem is from my mom. For a long time, my mother was like, people need to know that you still have a parent, because I feel like when you do the drug dealer's daughter, they just feel like you're an orphan now, and people are just not really seeing the full picture. Tell them you have a mom that loves you. Give me a poem. And so this is my mother's poem. So, y'all want to talk about mamas. Okay, then. My mama, so strong. A hurricane named his kids after hers. My mama, so much pressure. She made 3 diamonds in 39 years. My mama, so smooth. She talk like her skin. My mama, so smart. Y'all, she became my mama. So black, America don't know whether to kill her or clone her. My mama. So hood, if you GPS survival, you end up in her arms. My mama. So magic, unicorns chose not to exist when they heard she was coming. My mama. So old, baby, she could teach you something. My mama. So bougie, she taught me not to talk about other folks' mamas. My mama. So black, when you sit her next to God, you can barely tell the difference. My mama. So holy, duh, my daddy is a ghost. My mama. So Midwest, she said, bless your heart. And meant fuck you. My mama. So down south, she said, bless your heart. It meant fuck you. My mama, so many summers in Brooklyn, New York with her Aunt Cat. She said fuck you and meant fuck you. My mama will whip your ass so fast you forget what you done did. My mama will gather you in her arms so fast you forget what you done did. My mama. So fly, she got birds embarrassed. My mama. So pretty, she make flowers shy. My mama. So loud, the devil. Shh. My mama. So fat, boy, your wallet is jealous. My mama. So soft, boo, your edges is jealous. My mama. So fresh, my guy, your breath is jealous. My mama. So black, She gave her 3 daughters everything she got. My mama, so poor. She gave her 3 daughters everything she got. My mama, so hood. She gave her 3 daughters everything she got. My mama, so nosy. And she nosy, y'all. But she kept me alive. Thank you. So that's the poem for Tracy Freeman, Big T Dog. I love you, mommy. She just came over and got her Christmas present early, so she knows I love her, but extra. This poem here is called Self-Made. Kylie Jenner is watching television in my bedroom, watching The Wiz, and she is jumping on my bed. She secretly wants to know why there is not more than one white person in The Wiz, but she is smart enough to know she should not ask. I look in my room really well and see that things are absent. Important things are absent. Important things are missing. My things, the walls are white and barren and laughing in the spaces my things were. I asked Kylie Jenner where my things are, and she's honest. She mutes The Wiz, looks me where my face was. My face is barren and white and laughing now. She tells me she gave it all away, that it is American, all of it. I put up 3/5 of a protest and my room is musicless and danceless and the maps are missing an entire continent. It is everything they have always wanted. It is everything. The juice, Jerry curl droop, the spit the black mother takes on finger to wipe faces clean of dirt, of joy, of tears, of shame. Suge Avery piss, WAP. Kylie Jenner is still jumping on my bed. But now she is attempting to take her cornrows out. She is ready for something new. Every time she takes one down, a different one appears. Simple Kylie Jenner. She did not know cornrows were created as protection. Kylie Jenner is getting very tired and the cornrows will not stop multiplying. She tries to talk, but her lips swell like a bloody history. Her lips bloom like magnolias and suddenly no one hears her. She finally sounds black enough to be silenced. She looks me and the barren, white, laughing face she has traded for my own sobbing brown one and asks for help. But no one answers. So that is that poem. This poem is called The Reclaiming, The Reclaiming. The hood can yell for itself. The hood does not need your voice to introduce its own. Your quick mimic is a quiet crime and a loud sentencing. This dialect, Ebonics, it's not a case study. It's not a thesis statement. It is not a sociology report. It is not a buffet, nor is it a welcome mat. Your children have full mouths of my children, and you call it rebellion instead of theft because rebellion looks better with blood. You can learn every dance, and you will never know the sweat of needing to move with nowhere to go. You can listen to every rap song, and you will never live the lyric. Be the drug deal gone good, be the love story gone bad, be the shit talk, be a barbecue of good intentions. You can come to the house parties and go home before the cops come, before the song ends, before you actually have to understand. You can recite every line in Friday and never laugh at the correct parts. You can say, bye, Felicia, without knowing her crack addiction, without knowing the droop of her shirt and the bag of her braids, how love and shame can be sisters and still look nothing alike, how hungry is always around the corner, where survival comes without the guide or loses it too soon. You can be the Huxtables. You can be the Huxtables or the Bradys. Either way, there isn't a damn thing that you know about this. Tell me, who you know hiss like a hot comb on the back of your neck? Who you know really trapping? Who you know really trapped? What you know about reckless? Who you know really wrecked with no insurance? Who you know riding dirty? Who you calling dirty? Who you won't bring home to your mama? Who you think you fooling? Who you think a fool? Survival is a sticky sap. Slang is what happens when you eat it every day and wake to lick the corners of your lips. Our children play together, you sneer, picking up your children's dirty habits. You convince them they are eating dirt instead of telling them to stop taking candy from strangers. Thank you.
Well, I want to meet your mother.
She's so fun. I love
I would
her.
have liked to
She's so
see
fun.
your mom here, and I think, we're moving through the hour, and I want to hear more poems, and I don't want to speed you up at all, but I know that in your work, you address this idea of urban Blackness, just right there, the difference, the
Yes.
Huxtables versus the hood or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Can you help like white people like
Absolutely.
me
It's one of
figure
my
this
favorite
out?
conversations.
This is really insightful, but I don't want to sidetrack too much from your poems. So
No, absolutely. I think that's a brilliant conversation as well. You asked great questions. This was a conversation that I've really been working on as far as my current manuscript that I'm working on right now, Urban Girl and the Spoils of War. And really for me, and I'm not going to speak for everyone because I don't like to think that I'm an expert yet, but
right.
For me, especially growing up urban, there's always been a difference between urban and Black. And that is true for both white people and Black people. Whereas the idea of Blackness has been rooted and being upwardly mobile since the Reconstruction era. And to be upwardly mobile and be Black in America often means to align yourself with whiteness or to white ideals, right? And to be urban means to be left behind, to be in the area, the ghettos, where people are like, oh, those are just the Black people who just never got it together, didn't make it. Those are where the stupid Blacks are. Oftentimes people are like, and well, who are you? I've often been asked, like, I've been told, you've got to be mixed. Like sometimes people are like, you can't even just be Black, you're way into intelligent and you like these things and you speak so well. Like they're like, I don't even believe your race at this point, let alone where you actually grew up at. And then there are Black people who are like, oh, well, that's ghetto. I don't want to be that type of Black. There is a distancing. There's also this new idea of Black culture, of urban culture being glorified. When I say urban culture, I'm talking about the things that you hear about in rap videos, right? That's urban culture. That's when Black people let you know, absolutely, urban and Black aren't the same. We're not all Lil Wayne. We're not all doing these things. That is a specific type of culture. And they like to claim that culture, Black people, when it works in their favor. And they like to distance themselves from that culture when it does not work in their favors. Kind of similar to what white people do to Black culture, how white people put it on and then take it off when it's convenient and then distance themselves from Black people when they don't like it. And at the same time, Black people turn around and do it to urban Black people. Because often when you're oppressed, you do oppress. Like it's the way you feel better. That's why I think a lot of poor whites are more outwardly racist than well-off whites, because you are also oppressed. Classism is affecting you, and it feels better to have something else to look down upon. That sociology. So I think I really want to point that conversation out with Black people a lot, because I care the most about Black people. They're my people. That's who I care the most about. That's where I'm invested. And I just want to make sure that they are aware that they are doing the things that their oppressors are doing, and it's not cute, and that it hurts. That urban people are not idiots, that we absolutely know sometimes it's fun to listen to Cardi B, but you really don't want to sit next to us. You don't want us to work at your jobs. You don't want your white neighbors to know. You don't want your sorority friends or your academic space to really have us there. And we know it. We can feel it. And it's not that you hate us necessarily. It's just this idea of you don't want us to tarnish what you felt like you have acquired in relative to whiteness. And with all due respect, fuck whiteness. So it's like, I don't care how close you get to whiteness. That does not make you anything any better than me. In fact, and as far as my belief is, white people notice it less. As far as they're concerned, that's why we all get murdered at the same rate. That's why you can be a Black boy leaving a university with a full degree, just met Obama, shaked his hand, and a white cop will still kill you. They don't care half as much. White people don't tend to care half as much about who is ghetto and who is not. They're like, you're all the same. You're all the N-words. So like, whatever, like, I don't know the difference. Whereas in the Black community, it's definitely a conversation. So for me, that's that conversation.
Which do you find more distressing or weighty? Having to explain this within the Black community, or being as a Black performance artist having to explain, or being expected maybe to explain this to like white people like me? I mean, is that annoying?
Not, I mean, it absolutely can be. I want to start off with saying that there are times and instances where I'm like, absolutely not. I don't have time for this. I do not feel like teaching today. They have not paid me enough to be on this, that, and the third. And I'm just like, this is too much. But there are other days where it's like, I genuinely, I would like to think that I'm an outgoing personality. I tend to get along with a lot of people from most walks of life. And I'm like, not that people should not be interested in listening to whoever will want to teach them, but I'll often find myself in situations where white people are actually very much so willing to listen to me and are very receptive to what I have to say, because I in some way have endeared them. And I'm absolutely aware of that. And I use that to my advantage. And I'm like, okay, so while you're all sitting here and listening and being entertained, here are the things I think you should fucking know. So I don't mind sharing. I also often tend to do it because I really want my audience to know. And I tend to, like I said, I have a lot of white followers and fans. I have a lot of white liberals that are like, yeah, Ciara Freeman rocks. So I'm like, if I really do, then you have to really, I want you to listen and I want you to understand. I want you to reflect back after you have bought the books, after you've left the show. I still want this to be a conversation that you won't just have with me, but have with your friends, your family members. Like, don't let the work stop here.
Well, and really your art, through art, you can do that, versus politics or standing on the street corner yelling at people or passing around petitions. I mean, you're performing a poem that makes people cry no matter what color they are or where they're from.
And that's often the position they find themselves in. So I tell people it's a lot about proximity. I think racism and all types of oppression has a lot to do with proximity and how actually close you are to people and how much of people you get to know as far as layers and multitudes, right? And so I think that moment of vulnerability, no matter who you are, often or not, when you see me on stage, you're like, yeah, I'm listening, because that sucks. You were 16, you say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and just have this conversation. And I'm like, and it takes a tragedy sometimes, and that sucks, but it does take a tragedy to spur these conversations. And like I often say, like, my father was very pro people, very pro different walks of life. Like, my father was a Black cis man in the hood who was not homophobic in any way, who raised his kids not to be homophobic or transphobic. Like, he had gay friends. Like, my father was really like top tier, like what it was to be liberal minded in that hood environment that we were in. So like, and not that he was perfect. He had a lot of misogyny that he had to unpack that I am now unpacking, but he did good. You know what I'm saying? And he always made me have this idea. And my mother says this, she's like, you're like your father. Y'all really, really are dreamers at the end of it. Innately, y'all are very John Lennon. Y'all are very imagine all the people. Y'all are very that. And my father was just like, try. Don't ever break your back. Don't ever but if there is someone who maybe could do better if they knew better, what is it going to cost you to teach them? And now in this day and age, I'm like, it should cost them something, because white people are outlandish. They're going to have to start paying for, and they do. White people are paying for entire books, classes to learn and unlearn racism. It should not be on the job of the performer to do that, but on the nights for which I am capable, on the nights for which I've had a few drinks, on the nights for which I am in the mood, then absolutely. I want to say at the end of my life, not just at the end of my career, that not only did I notice as an artist, as an observer of what sociology and connections and systematic oppressions look like, but I tried to do something about it. Like, I didn't just sit there and watch and write. Like, I made some attempts, and my attempts might not be like big and political. They are personal. They are interpersonal connections. And for me, that's good enough, because I get messages and DMs years later after shows with people saying, I changed my mind. I'm in grad school. I wrote this paper. I thought I would have never took this course had I not seen your show. It changed my mind. And that's enough for me, So thanks.
Well, let's change our minds some more with some more poems, because now
Okay,
you're
let's get
off in
into
a whole
it.
nother direction.
In 1 minute, we will be on to something completely else. So,
Yeah, and
here
for
we go.
those of you that may watch, we may go a little longer today because we want to hear more from Ciara, and this will all be available on the AQR YouTube and whatever they do out on the web too. So just so you know.
This poem is titled, I Wish I Could Have Kissed Devon Wilson in the Mouth. Not to taste Jimi Hendrix or Miles Davis or Mick Jagger, but to swallow her tongue before she did. Blade liquor to blade liquor. I bet she tasted like a hallucination. I think I see her in my lover's wet cave listening for rain. If I had been born a musician instead of a poet, maybe if she had preferred belladonna to foxglove. Devon wasn't the medicine, but she was the mortar. She was who you wanted to hold the balm. Death is the only fountain of youth, coin-fed and greedy and shrinking the closer you get to God. Devon with the afro, heaven high, Devon, who knew banishment and wasn't bashful about it, a childhood written as characterized by violence and poverty, leather-clad cocaine cocktail conversation in the back of my throat. She makes my heart water. I don't understand how they called her a groupie and not what happens to the sweet and mysterious black space after the stars burn inside of it. It's divine, not quite divine, but kind of close. I know the feeling, and I still wonder what it tastes like on someone else. And I know it's irony, because this is what she was doing her whole entire legend, so starved that when hope came, she knew nothing but to gulp it down. And in the end, no one knows if she jumped or if she was pushed, but she was returned to the concrete, replanted rose, her body a bloody bouquet, her audience unfazed. This poem is called For Poussey. Actually, I don't want to do that poem. I'm going to go ahead and follow my first gut. I'm going to replace it with another poem that I feel like is more timely, but it also fits into this category, and it's a little bit shorter. And that poem is a rather long poem. So I want to go ahead and give you this poem. And it's a relatively new poem. And yeah, it'll be out for publication too, relatively soon. So that's a cool thing. I'm not the only person who likes this poem. It's also, I also want to talk about form a little bit. This is something, this poem is a part of a series of poems that is broken into 4 parts. And this particular poem that I'm reading from the series is the second poem in the series. And it plays with pantoums and repetition. Part 2, Cleo, or taking one thing to mean another. And all I'm saying is, Queen Latifah was the one who sacrificed herself and set it off. Cleo, with her beautiful fat and a laugh, honey heavy packs of Newport Strong, she died feeling disposable. You shouldn't even have to live like that. Who sacrificed herself and set it off? Cleo, with her beautiful fat and a laugh, honey heavy packs of Newport strong. All I'm saying is her scalp slipped back like an arrow. She died feeling disposable. You shouldn't even have to live like that. She's not the only one to die. They all Black women. But of course, she is the first to offer lesbian. And all I'm saying is her scalp slipped back like an arrow. Her girlfriend ain't speak the whole movie. A goodbye caught in her throat like a wishbone. She not the only one to die. They all Black women. But of course, she is the first to offer lesbian. You can call it what you want, but they will still give you a betrayal. Her girlfriend ain't speak the whole movie. A goodbye caught in her throat like a wishbone. Ursula, a ghost to everyone but Cleo. I bet the first time she spoke, a haunting happened. You can call it what you want, girlfriend, but it's still a betrayal. Heteronormativity betrays itself. Damn right, it's gonna play useless meaning when they ask, what is different about this picture? And they will ask, you must point to yourself and disappear. She opened her pretty ass mouth, and I bet the first time she spoke, a haunting happened. 90s West Coast rap dripping like everything shiny in the hood, like bodies. Her friends pile up in her whip. She loved that motherfucking car so much. I just know it's gonna be her casket. I know her girl gonna bury her alone, meaning I think the most beautiful thing about the color purple is Suge and Celie trying to kiss the ugly off each other and realizing the ugly was never theirs to begin with. Everything is a sacrifice on loop. So that is that poem. And I'm gonna finish a poem that I think is fun. Now, my ex doesn't think it's fun. My ex never thought this was a fun poem, but this is one of my performance poems that I do pretty well with in slam. It's one that my audience tends to like, and it's one that I still enjoy doing. Although I do not feel this way about her anymore. So sometimes I'm like, should I still do this poem? I don't know, but here we are. I decided to do it tonight. I might retire it after this, so everybody enjoy. Hexes for my exes. After Rachel Wiley. The boss. Go look up Rachel Wiley. Oh, ex-lover. I heard that you heard that I don't wish you shit. But that's not true. I still wish you plenty of shit. For instance, I wish you really, really, really fantastic marijuana. And then I wish you a marijuana tolerance so high, a session with Snoop Dogg, Cheech and Chong, Martha, Wiz Khalifa, Rihanna, Scooby, and Shaggy, plus me will not work. I wish you trips. I do. I wish your mama stay tripping, your new job stay tripping, your new boo stay tripping. I wish every day of your life was a fucking trip with really great weed that will not get you high. I wish you into bars that serve everything except what you want. I wish my heart to be the only thing on tap. I wish you scuff shoes after buying them for the first time every time. I wish you more girls. I do. I wish you girls who claim they are nerds but don't know the difference between Marvel and DC characters. I wish you girls who tell you they can't cook and they can cook. They just don't want to cook for your punk ass. I wish you girls who tell you they can squirt, but it's really not squirt. I wish you end pieces of bread. I wish you nothing but end pieces of bread. I wish you entire loaves of end pieces of bread. I wish you into a world where chocolate doesn't exist. I wish you into a world where bloodthirsty ostriches roam the free land searching for your blood. I wish you into a world where there is no music except Drake mixtapes, Taylor Swift on every hook, which really ain't that bad until it's all you got, and then it's that fucking bad. I wish you into a world where your tongue tastes everything except me as overcooked okra. A world where I never had to write this poem. A world where my wishes weren't so much like you, girl. Good inside my mouth. Meaningless the moment you left. Thank you. And thank you for having me. That is my set.
Thank you, Ciara. I think we could have a whole program on the intersection between your sexuality and urban and poetry and all of that. So I don't even know where to go with that. And we're kind of near the end here. But if there's something that you'd like to comment on that in terms of, I'm thinking especially in terms of your work, which I'd like to touch to at the very end as a teacher, and with other students, that you could encourage people who may be in both those boats or the boat together or similar. Anyway, if you could talk about that just for a second.
Sure. Yeah, like one of the things that as a writer, as a 30-year-old writer now, and I've been writing since I was 15. I've been doing this since Brave New Voices, performing poetry since I was 15. And so I really do love my students. They remind me so much of me, first and foremost. It's just like getting to experience one childhood again. I'm such a nerd. I watch cartoons all the time. I don't have any children, but if you come into my house, I have so many toys and like kid animated type ideals, you would assume that I had a child. So I really love my students. They're my hearts first and foremost. But to talk about what my sexuality does, in fact, that's so interesting. One of my students just came out to me. One of my young ladies just came out to me. And I'm so proud of her. She had been writing about it, but you never want to assume with children. I'm like, maybe this is just an outlet, but she finally went ahead and said something to me. And I think that's a big.
How old are your students, just to help us with that?
Oh, okay, absolutely. So what I deal with primarily, it's different now because of virtual life. I've actually had to expand who I'm teaching. I typically teach high schoolers, but now I also have middle schoolers. So now I am all the way across the board. And like where most educators are like, middle school is so hard. I love middle schoolers. I might do it permanently. I'm like, whenever we get back into school, I like them. I think they are the most open-minded. Like where high schoolers think they're too cool sometimes at that space. They're not at that space where they think they're too cool, but they're also still sweet, like elementary school kids. Like they still want to be loved and validated. I could talk about my babies forever, so just let me focus for a second. So being queer, I think is...
Yeah, the girl, you said one of your students talked to you about coming out when I interrupted you so rudely. I'm sorry.
No, it was not rude. I will do the same thing. And I'm just saying I will go on a tangent and have a whole conversation. I'm trying to stop me really and make sure I answer what you need to be answered. So really at this point, when I think about my students and in different ways they've been comfortable, because it's not just been as far as sexuality. My kids feel like my teacher's a poet. My teacher cares more. My teacher cares when I get bullied. My teacher cares about extra stuff. My teacher cares if I'm hungry. My teacher cares if my mom's mean to me. My teacher cares if the girl's on. My teacher cares in a way that, and my teacher has time to care. My teacher does not seem exhausted like maybe my other teachers or my parents do. So I think being an artist keeps me young in a sense. And I also think it keeps me open. And I think children really sense openness. They sense it because they want it, they need it, and they kind of gravitate towards it. So, and I feel like they are constantly making me want to be better, a better example of me. And I think that's how parents feel when they have kids. So I'm like, this is cool that I didn't have to go through childbirth to get this feeling of I want to be a better person because someone is paying attention to me. And I'm the youngest child, so I've never been in that position. And as far as my sexuality is concerned, it's always been something that I've made absolutely clear in my public life, and I've tried to make it clear in my career, but it's still something people don't seem to pick up on often. I don't know if it's because I'm a more femme queer person, but they seem to like not want to invite me often into queer conversations. And I'm often like, why? I have so many thoughts. I've been out since I was 14 years old. Why don't you want to? I know Audre Lorde. I've read all the queer greats. Is it because I wear dresses? It's because I'm a lipstick lesbian, isn't it? And it's also because I'm Black. Like I get all these feelings and I'm like, I can have these conversations with you. I certainly can have these conversations with you. But I think it's important because my students specifically said, like, it's because I know you exist, and I know you outly exist. And I know that when I hear my mom or their friends talking about queer women, they talk about them like they're failures, and they don't do, like, my mom would never guess. And she's like, I never told my mom because I like how much she likes you. She doesn't, I was like, but you can tell her, I don't care if she doesn't like me anymore after this. But she's like, I've never told her because she likes you a lot. But she's like, I think she would just be so surprised to know that the person that she likes and admires, and Miss Freeman said this and Miss Freeman said that. And she's like, well, Miss Freeman's queer. And she's like, and that's something that she gets to sit with. And it's like, you might not think the best of queer people, but that's because you haven't proximity. It goes back to that conversation I said about proximity. Her mother does not know what proximity she is in with a queer woman. Because as a teacher, I'm like, I'm not discussing my personal life with you. I don't have to, you're a parent. And so just that idea of having to I'm so out, and just knowing that my outness represents something to a lot of different girls. And that's a blessing, because you want to be a role model. At least I want to be a role model. And if you are going to be a role model, this is just my suggestion, and I'll leave it at that. As an artist, if you are going to try to be a role model, know exactly what you're trying to model before you try to do it. And like, be open, allowing yourself to grow, allow your mind to change, allow new ideas to come. And I'm talking to myself too. This is a reminder for when I watch this on YouTube. Follow your own compass in your heart, but don't be so set in change. And just be the best you can be. Nobody's role model is perfect, but the perfect role model keeps trying. And just remember that.
So that's for you, but the advice that you give to students that might be urban, Black, gay, or anything.
That they are just as important. I think a lot of what kids really want to hear is, I am valid, and that representation. And I think, again, it's a lot more than what it has been, especially with the LGBTQ community, and even also with urban children and Black children. But the idea of continuously reinforcing this and letting them know that that one, you have a future. And then two, like, actually doing the research and work with them to remind them that they have a past, right? So, like, yeah, you are not the first person to be LGBTQ. I'm not the first person to be LGBTQ. Let me show you these books. Let me show you the people who paved the way for you and I to exist as outly as we do. So once I know who my students are and how they feel, if they feel isolated, I try to remind them that they're not. And I'm a big reader. Like, I would show you all my books in my office is a mess right now. And I so many books, and I just feel like they're the gateway, right? And so I constantly try to tell my children, if you come to me all the time, but do the research before you feel so left out. You go to Google for everything else. I watch my kids go to Google for anything. Go to Google and type in 12-year-old girl who is Black and queer and questioning and likes comic books. Watch it be a whole wiki page about her. She exists. And sometimes that representation is important. And I'm like, and if she does not exist yet, then you have got to be her. And that's what I remind my students. And if you can't find an example, then that means now you're the example. And now you have to do that for the next girl, because there is someone coming after you. There's always someone who's going to come after you. And there was always someone who was before you.
Well, I think that's probably the perfect place to leave us on. Very hopeful and inspiring. Thank you, Ciara. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm gonna go watch all your YouTubes.
Thank you so much, and I enjoy all your questions again, Heather. It was very poignant, the questions you asked. They were kind.
Well, I mean, you're right. You have the. From my side of the screen, this warmth and happiness, and yet you're writing and sharing such very hard things. It's a gift to mix those up. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for another Sunday afternoon with us in AQR's Piece de Resistance literary series. And again, please consider making a donation to AQR so that it continue another 40 years. And today we have a real generous supporter who is going to match whatever you give, small, big, medium, up to $1,000. So, and thanks to Ciara for being here so that you would be here and be able to do that. So anyway, it's all good. And I also just wanted to thank Cody Carver and the Anchorage Museum at the Rasmussen Center, who, as Ciara pointed out, is a model in our state and the world really for museums and cultural institutions and highlighting all kinds of people in all kinds of situations. And I'm grateful for that affiliation. And of course, always thank you to the absolutely inspiring Ciara Freeman. And again, Ron Spatz is going to send us off. But before he does, I just want to wish you all happy holidays. And please stay safe and healthy and be kind to each other. Be kind to each other. I don't think if you looked at Ciara, you would have any idea of the stories that are in her heart. And that's true with all of us, I think. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Ciara. What a passionate and powerful reading. And we're glad that AQR is one of your homes and that you would be here tonight to share with us. I want to just say one thing, just for the record. We're going to not only have this on YouTube, we have been breaking the YouTubes into excerpts. Generally, we have multiple presenters, so each excerpt will be on them. On this one, we will have the main event, and then we will have 3 excerpts because there were 3 sections that you read with commentary. So we'll make those into smaller videos that people can review, and we're excited about that. And then finally, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, and to come back on January 10. January 10, we are going to start up again after the holidays. We have Camille Dungy, poet Camille Dungy, Joe Mylar, contributing editor and poet Dorianne Locks. And we are going to start up January weekly. It's going to be amazing, as it's already been. And I wish everybody, again, as Heather did, a happy holiday. And even better, I mean, I'm looking forward with some optimism to the number changing on the year. I'm very hopeful to get to 21. I don't know what 20 was, but I know it has to be different. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Ciara. Thank you again.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.